Morning, all. I will be writing an addition to the Voice in the Dark chapter storyline that I've written. Something that I wrote just before I had my schizophrenic episodes for the first time during an episode of taking ayahuasca's secondary component, the monoamine oxidizer inhibitor, in a dose that was one third of the lethal dose, so pretty fucking high. The recommended dose of that particular compound for ayahuasca is 5 grams, and I took 20 grams. So I was pretty fucked up. And I summoned something that I can only say resembles some form of Egyptian god. And it was really weird. Like literally the storyline kind of sort of came to life. So we can say that Chaos kind of had a day with me after writing the story. The Voice in the Dark storyline is my take on how humanity can survive. It isn't, perhaps the word I would use is liked by the Imperium. It's not really hated either, but it's openly not liked by the Imperium, far as I can tell. Some of the fans liked it, some hated the numerous grammar errors, which is a common complaint for somebody who has a writing, a speech, and a reading inability or inhibition or, error. So the storyline is pretty simple. One of these Space Marine chapter masters starts hearing voices, and the voice convinces him that the only way for humanity to survive is both for the Eye of Terror and the Eye of Terra to be destroyed. And he hatches a plan on how this could be done. He collects a lot of human guys into void ships, or those very large Eldar-like spacecrafts, and flies them in front of the Tyranids and gets the Tyranids to chase them, and then crashes them straight into the Eye of Terror. The resulting shockwave eliminates both the Terra and the Terror systems, and that's basically the end of the storyline. In the end, it is revealed that the Emperor liked the outcome because they were turning into religious nutjobs, and he was turning into essentially the sixth god of chaos, which was against his original will. So he, in the end, blesses the main characters who all die in the storyline. Spoilers. And I wrote it maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't know. And it got a good reception. I posted it on the Space Battles forum, which is one of the hardest to get likes sci-fi forums for writers. It is notoriously difficult to get the people there to like you. It is not impossible, but notoriously difficult. And I actually got a few people posting and saying this was good. I've scanned the results in the Astral, and I can't recommend that path. But when I listen to the opinions of the spirits, they say it's a good read. Some of the readers also said that the starting 2/3 feels like an actual Warhammer Games Workshop story, so it's that good. The ending 1/3 is rushed and pretty crappy. That's for two reasons. One, I suck at writing combat. I absolutely suck at writing combat. And I was incredibly rushed because of finals, so I couldn't really put the effort I wanted. I started writing it like 2 months before the finals and was expecting to finish it in, a couple of days. It's 80 pages, which for me would be a couple of days because I write 20 pages in 4 hours. But it turned out to take a lot more energy out of me than I was expecting. And then there were like a week into the finals. I hadn't studied at all. I hadn't taken any of the supplementary classes, and I completely bombed my finals. I got A on English, a basically F minus in Finnish, writing. and I got a passing grade on math, but the lowest passing grade, I think, and about a B or a C in the humanistics topics, which for me is abysmal. Getting I should have gotten an A plus in English, but I was rushed and I was very heavily smoking weed. So, there's your answer for why I fucked up the finals. None of my study points have expired, so I can redo the finals anytime I want. And now that I've quit smoking weed, I got my copy of my study points, and I actually think it might be a good idea to finish. That being said, I wrote a test attempt at fleshing out some of the combat scenes, which were a little naughty, a little lewd, in the part where the main character fights Slanesh, and it was okay received. The modder of the page, the administrator of the page, said that some of the parts were pretty lewd. There were, naked people, naked children, war, breeding angel wings. It was pretty lewd, but I think I got the mood of what I think I should write when I write chaos. There's the right kind of weirdness in the story that it just chimes. So now I'm in the third part. I posted my last update 8 months ago, and I couldn't figure out where to take the story. I know that it's going to take place in my imaginary system gallery from Eve, and I'm going to place Eve, the map of Eve, at the center of the Eye of Terror, and it's going to be a few thousand years after the destruction of the Eye of Terror, and it's going to be something resembling an Eve Warhammer crossover, but I couldn't figure out where to take it, so I was just writing about funny random stuff happening to me in the frame of Warhammer. And I didn't get any comments, which is not surprising because, like I said, this is a hard forum. They have, I believe, something on the order of 100 stories being updated a day. And it's remarkably hard to get good likes and good reads. The front page has 15, 20 threads, each having their own story. And if you post something on your own story, you're going to be on the front page for maybe at most an hour. After that, you're gone. So if people don't actively comment on it, it's not going to be seen. So I have an idea of how to continue this storyline, and it's going to involve the faction of basically demi-humans, which have the highest level of technical understanding, and it's not the mechanicum, it's that kind of species that to me looks like humans that completely transformed themselves into machines and was destroyed, I believe, during the Age of Strife. And the main storyline is probably gonna be one of the guys has a malfunctioning implant that nobody can correct, and they need to find those guys to get the implant, and it's gonna involve hijinks and such. It's gonna be hobbity in that you're gonna see a lot of scenes of them eating, and you're gonna see a lot of conversation of them. You're gonna see a lot of conversation of them walking and walking and walking some more, because I don't feel like I want to rush this one. So the first 5 chapters of this thing are out. The first 5 chapters of this third part are out, and the first one was 80 pages. I'm not going to read the first one, but I may read some of the chapters here. So let me read some of this and maybe get your opinions. I have two watchers, meaning that there are two guys who are waiting for updates on this thing, and that's good for me. I'm gonna post some new stuff in this, and probably not gonna get anywhere, but I'll try. Here goes. The initiates, juniors, and off-worlders were gathered around Elder Gideon. He had just finished telling the story of the Triumvirate to the gathered. Triumvirate is the group that destroyed Chaos. It had received warm blessings and salutations from the audience. It usually does. Junior scribes Lamia and Shadow were watching from a distance of some dozen or so meters, between two of the numerous pillars circling the central garden. They had advanced to the level of late Bronze Age on a world with post-warp and industrial civilization in relative harmony, if not mutual understanding at all times. The story is from 1,500 years ago, from the time of the Chaos Wars, after the eyes of terror and order vanished in the Great Tyrannid Night. Without the true Astronomicon to guide them, the Tyrannid fell lightless and guideless and reverted to a danger not much greater than the Orc. Other than that, life goes on. A minority in the Imperium are Republican and openly so. Some sectors don't tolerate them, others don't tolerate the Imperials. Though overall, it seems humanity is better off. Lamia remarked to Shadow while watching the play that was forming around Gideon. Shadow nodded. They were junior scribes with current assignments of verifying the level of industrial damage to the environment and taking proper precautionary steps. It was not always pleasant, but for work in the Imperium, it is solid. They continued to watch the play. It was turning into the fall of the Eldar, with Gideon playing Slanesh and devouring the younglings one by one. Lamia laughed and made a slight motion for Shadow to follow. They walked some distance down the white and golden halls with occasional decorations of emerald colors in a plaza-like section of a ground facility. The planet Gallery, somewhere near the North Pole, is a hot planet with a slightly heavier gravity, but it is still tolerable to humans. You can notice when I'm reading this that some of these are not linguistically correct, but what can you do? It's a foreign language. Biologically speaking, the inhabitants aren't that different from normal humans. They have their diseases and faubles. This particular group prided itself in being able to build everything you use yourself or with your closest clan unit. Therefore, while they are able to use, they do not build and therefore only qualify for late Bronze Age technology. Armor technology is pretty insane. They can build fighter jets, but not forever and ever. So they consider it trash. Meaning that if the technology they build is not something that they can maintain on their own or understand and build on their own, it's considered trash. Their guard is functional late Iron Age North Europe. They carry plasma pistols as police sidearms. Everyone else has something heavier. After a while of strolling through the indoor parks, classrooms, and hallways, they arrive in a small, crowded office. The clutter, the books, and the general feel is that of a research residence. Shadow settles the place a bit as it is his office. After a few moments, they sit down. So, today's agenda: how the Eldar might be influenced to affect global warming. Yep, Lemmy responded, bored and shy. And then there's a few links to like the previous story, even so on and so forth. And here's the second chapter. Or perhaps we should say defeat entropy, Lamia says with a quiet smile. Shadow leans back on the sofa and stretches his neck. Though to be technical, you could say her as well. With a chaotic influenced scribe in a high mutagenic sector, you could easily say table. But for the sake of ease, both Shadow and Lamia have adapted to using his term, though both are something of an odd cross between. Mutations have increased rather abruptly with the collapse of the Astronomicon, though on the good side they almost never lead to chaotic corruption due to the destruction of the Eye of Terror Sun. And that's the wrong date. It should be about 1,000 years ago. If we read 150, it's about 1,000 years ago. After a while, Shadow spoke out. Yep, yeah, defeating entropy. It's not really warming in as much as becoming sentient, consuming its own energy quicker to opt for a short, brighter existence. It seems that the most sentient sectors of space will heat up, and there is little beyond the policy of conservation that can be done to prevent them being filled with things hotter than space that fly around holding space in hotter than space areas. It's kind of weirdly put, but I hope you understand. Ranging from living spaces to reactor waste energy. So what we need is to move people away from the hottest zones into the colder zones that are welcoming, and through that mediate the effect. Somehow the Eldar have mastered this even before their fall and seem to be able to survive with temperature fluctuations and entropy. We don't know if they can actually live forever, but for our purpose, they have the answer in short. Conservation, moving to less habited welcoming sectors. Unwelcoming Unwelcoming would only increase entropy due to resistance and somehow convincing the Eldar to aid us. Still very weirdly written. Lamia sat through the speech, listening carefully and nodding at key points. The agreement between the two was pretty uniform. Well, more than required to form a chapter, but such is not for junior scribes, perhaps in time. Shadow continues to speak, so it seems we should start the presentation with a short overview of evolutionary history, human history, and the post-imperial era and the main challenges we now face. Perhaps offer a few suggestions, contacting the Eldar, trying to scavenge for Necron artifacts, anything that could, in theory, cool space. Perhaps recommend hunting for the remaining Tyranid hosts through the galaxy. Then politely step back from the suggestions and say that the best of our understanding as a species, and certainly ours as the presenter, we don't have an answer. Lamia nods, then interrupts the stream of thought. So take it down the serious path, you say. You do realize they give this assignment to someone every year, and it's supposed to be, well, a joke, if you will. They praise the world and say the problem is we have warm houses and then trot off the stage. We could do some pretty wicked burns with this assignment. You really want to take it seriously? Lamia pauses for a moment and sighs, then continues. I suppose you're right. Serious it is. Isn't talking about the Imperial era at all a little redundant with the time we have? Shadow leans back and nods and makes a mild grunting sigh noise, rubs his eyes and lets out a long sound, then sits upright on the sofa. You do the writing, that's all I got. I've been thinking what to say for the past 2 days and I got that far. You're better at this. I can do the talk if you want, but I think it may be better that you. Also, there's a mistake in that. It should be, but I think it may be better that you do it. Shadow says. I'll do it. Don't worry about it. Lamia responds. He reaches for a shisha and passes it to Shadow. Shadow takes the hose, takes a few deep breaths of air, and then breathes rapidly for a while. Then puts the device in his mouth and takes a deep inhale. Then passes it back to Lamia, who just takes a calm, long, shallow inhale with lots of air through the nose at the same time. Both sit silent for a few minutes, then slowly exhale. The music from the street plays in the room. Traffic, horses, agrarian settings with the occasional self-built car. Lots of people on horses and on foot. Music is heard almost everywhere, a local tradition. It is believed to repel the Necron, the few last remaining threats to humanity. The sound of jubilant life and even ecstasy, excess, worship, and exaltation will all repel the Necron just as they repel the warp and life around them. With the collapse of the dual eyes of the warp, Eye of Terra and Eye of Terra, demon population in the warp has been reduced by around 95 to 98%. Accounts vary on the actual number, at the cost of around 30% of the human population. Most people currently alive consider it a good trade. The Tyranid hive mind is also effectively crippled with the loss of the Astronomicon it was using to direct the invasion of the galaxy, and without that light it has reverted back into a more primitive self, but it is by no means without control. Should such a device be built again, the mind would surely awaken again. The Tau and Necron represent the worst remaining threats to humanity. Orc have started to evolve towards Cork and have become greatly pacified with the loss of the eye. They are even considered civilized in many sectors, an unheard of achievement in the past. Humanity is slowly expanding outward from the galaxy and is greatly afraid of when they will run into the old ones and what such a meeting will entail. Most of the galaxy is at peace, but it is a strange peace. There are several orc tribes in Gallery. They raid the human settlements. The human settlements raid them. Both sides never lose anything important, but they do lose such a peace. I think that should be such a peace. The weak, no matter where they are, will be enslaved. The powerful and the defenseless conquered. But even a token defense and interest in your own affair Affairs will near guarantee your survival. Worlds no longer compete against each other for resources, but with their population on how liberal they can go. Going more liberal guarantees a infinite immigration, which guarantees infinite wealth, but at the cost of, well, having infinite wealth. So most worlds only allow people they specifically request and otherwise guard themselves. But there have been cases where a newly terraformed world attracts billions of inhabitants in months and trillions in years. Such rapid colonization process happens in truly open worlds. Some worlds have remained with the imperial level of technology, but most either seek technology at any price or, like Gallery, value almost exclusively only what you can build yourself. There are two tribes of permanence on the planet and one which adjusts depending on need. They represent the old view, the new view, the mob who decides between them. Such a system has been in place for around 85 years. Both Lamia and Shadow are in their 30s. Both have planted gene stock in the population and see their children raised in the society. Neither have much interest other than the occasional visit in imposing on the roles of Neither have much interest other than the occasional visit in imposing on the role of the female any limitations during childbearing, even that of pleasurable company unless such a request is made. Some people are able to build cars, but they don't scavenge for parts. They do all the crafts themselves, and or with a very close-knit community of from gathering and smelting metals to crafting the wires for the engine. Such a degree of manual dexterity when the religiously held belief in small community and only what you can build yourself is given up is of great value to the Imperium. The planet is surrounded by a satellite network designed both to repel invaders and give every citizen a microsecond response time teleportation system. This prevents nearly all forms of violence upon a person crime that's still weirdly put, sometimes even bad dates. The planet has its psychic population, but it is not seen as any better in terms of occupation than any other, so there is no drive to evolve towards psychers. This has greatly displeased the imperial authority in that everyone is now that the protector has left expected to evolve as fast as they can. So refusal to adopt to telepathy or warp abilities is seen as downright harmful, but it is near the only infraction on an otherwise greatly valued world. Occasionally, the planet does long-distance missions to other systems, sometimes to trade, sometimes to wage war. For its small size and primitive nature, its abilities at both are quite good, though not without comparison. Some 23 years ago, when the planet was threatened by a Tyranid splinter, the planetary orcs and humans fought side by side, while the Eldar provided lackluster support and the Imperium essentially cheered for the other side. The mentality was one of, yeah, punish those damn sinners. The Republic side was worried about the Imperium, but as per its standards, sent only volunteers and a few small craft. The orcs are generally considered friendly, but a single uninvited human venturing into their territory uninvited is expected to be eaten. Orc doing the same will most likely get sold into slavery, but as relations go, it's not the worst. There are rumors of 2 or 3 quarks on the planet, but these have not been confirmed by independent reports, though the rumors persist. The planet is around 15 Celsius warmer than old Terra, tropical or conifer through most of the planet, temperate or tropical. Gravity is about half of old Terra. There are around 3,000 people, 2,500 or so live within 230 kilometers of the capital, where the around 50 clans have divided the area of around 10,000 square kilometers into smaller fiefdoms. Most people live a late Bronze Age existence but have access to highest levels of technology and comfort, but choose to not partake as such. The capital is at the edge of the Arctic and experiences long, deep winters. The polar ice caps are small and occasionally vanish for the summer, but are steady throughout the short winter. Year is 100 Terran days. A few clans specialize in ultramodern technology, and a few on providing recruits for one of the 3 main human factions in the galaxy, striving to maintain a balance of providing to each. The Necrons have been working with the majority of the actual threats of their continuation, such as the Tyranid and Chaos, and for the most part Imperium, destroyed, they are now sensing a world just after it goes through the expected war, and their offer of permanent life in a machine is tempting the many. Many industrial worlds are building their own AIs, expected to take over the living population and guide towards permanent life. They are in deep contact with the Necrons and Catan for this information and assistance in any way that can be provided without provoking the Imperial or Republican response. Such worlds usually end in a massive population loss war towards their end, but some have ascended the status of warp gods themselves, as the status that the warp gods themselves aspired to and failed for the most descent to eternality beyond desire. Though such a state does not tempt most of the population of the galaxy, they are still at most considered the greatest threat. Paradoxically, of the remaining warp gods, the most powerful is the chaos god of atheism, who is pitifully powerful due to the deep hatred of interaction with the warp in any way. He is quietly leaning towards the Necrons as an answer to how emotions can become intelligence without religion. A loud beep interrupts the two staring into space and enjoying the calm. Orc raid on perimeter 3. Volunteers come forward. A loudspeaker at the corner of the room speaks up. Lamia and Shadow look at each other. Both start laughing like there's no tomorrow. They continue to stare out into space, and occasionally one takes a bite of a confection or a drink of water. Music continues to play. So that's chapters, I believe, 1 and 2. You may notice that I was still quite high when writing this, so some of the words and grammar choices and punctuations are a little off, but I hope you get the gist of what I'm writing about. So I have, I believe, 5 or 6 chapters of this, I think 5. And the last part where I'm currently at is, I think I'm going to read this part as well. It's still early in the morning. There's about 2 hours until the presentation, enough time to read the paper, grab something to eat, and possibly check up on the battle results from yesterday. Deciding not to annoy the people in the field by carrying food around, Shadow decides to go survey the battle site first. It's a 10-minute walk. It's on the opposite side of the village from where Jordan's place is. Walking there, smelling the air, observing the birds and the people, they all seem calm. It's time to call Lamia to check up. Hey man, did I wake you? Nah, I've been awake for a while. Got the paper done. Do you want to see it before the presentation? Yeah, that's the plan. I'm heading to the prison now. Meet you in the Asian place in a half. Yeah, I'll be there. Shadow laughs and closes with, this time you don't even have to pay for my food. I got enough stored up. They both let out a laughing sigh and close. The prison is within sight. It's a few cages on top and around a storage building. They chose that particular building when the village was set up. It's a dung storage building. Next to it is a small factory turning the dung into good quality fertilizer. The whole place is on the farm side of the village. It's currently empty, but it's hard to even get that stench out. Deciding to stay well away from the building for reasons of sanity and safety, it's not a good idea to roll around in dung before you're supposed to meet someone for lunch. Walking around the building, he surveys a few orcs in cages. The cages are not for physical harm, but for malnutrition. The captives are kept there until they are pretty far into starvation, not dangerous but humiliating, then allowed to return to on their own. Sometimes the others of their kind even pick them up. There are a few smaller orcs looking humiliated and turning away from people. Then there is one large one, probably large enough to rip through the cage and escape. Shadow looks at the large orc, and for a moment curious expression flashes. It is somewhat rare, not unheard of, just rare to see one of the larger ones in a cage. One of the weapon thanes watching the prisoner shouts to Shadow, "This one was shot by one of their own." Shadow turns to the thane, nods, and looks at the orc. There appears to be a large paintball-like shot straight on his face, and a few small bleeding wounds. The paint used in the ammo is radioactive, and it is used to keep track of your enemies. It is much easier than going after them into the forests. This way you only need to hover above and scan below, and you see all the orcs. The paint is also notoriously difficult, some would say downright impossible, to wash off. The radiological stays on the body, and even if the paint is somehow washed, the radiological is easy to use to track them. The others probably shot this one because he was shot by the tracker by our side and left him there so they can regroup on their own without risk of observation. Still. So what happened? Shadow shouts back at the Dane. He was trying to get the group to go for a bloodbath, a real anger one this. The others wanted none of it. Shadow nods and the Thane is now standing next to the cage. He rattles the cage with the bottom of his gun. Yeah, make a run for it, big guy. Please give us that window. Shadow cringes. Soldiers, he thinks to himself. The orc sits still and doesn't move. The shadow comes in closer and leads forward. So, you got a name? Marcus, the orc responds. Shadow nods. Well, how did you get caught? Stupidity and cowardice in me and my men in equal amounts, Marcus says with a low hushed tone. There is no sign of feeling of superiority or arrogance, just a deep anger at a predicament. Think you'll go back? Thinking about it. Well, we can always use new farmhand. You may not be cut out to be a soldier. Indeed. Shadow nods at the Thane, stands up and walks back to the village proper. You take care, you two, he shouts as he walks. He stops as he's walking, turns around. So what's your name, by the way, he shouts to Thane. Samuel Islander. Both nod and Shadow turns around again. The meeting awaits. Walking the streets of the village proper is a calming experience. There are a few restaurants and bars on the way to the meeting. They are mostly full. People are celebrating a victory and sharing stories. Stopping at a quick mart, he buys a small bag of potato chips to pick up the hunger, he tells himself. But really, he just wants potato chips. After a while of slow walking and observing life, the door to the Asian place is in sight. It's rice and topping style restaurant. Shadow and the group have really taken a liking to this place. The decor, the food, everything is up to par. Walking in through the door, a quick glance around, and Lamia hasn't arrived yet. That's the inn there is not necessary. I need a table for two. This way, sir. The table setup is near a corner next to a wall. It is regular near the back. It is the regular near the back. Something to be said for paranoia. If someone did something uncalled for, it's a good place to chug other patrons at them and run away. Can I have an OJ and a ham sandwich while I wait for my friend to arrive? I'll get that right away. Before the waiter has a chance to leave, the doorbell chimes and Lamia is there. Oh wait, cancel the sandwich. Lamia spots Shadow talking to the waitress and walks over, drops a pile of paper on the table and smiles. No one could write this much just by themselves. Even with planning for this presentation, this is much. It's probably from the holographic writing. You just pick a topic and the machine writes as much as you want. It's not that simple, of course. You need to constantly focus, but the speed can be hundreds of times that what you can write on a keyboard. Don't worry, he laughs. That's just the background for the reviewer. The paper is on top. Shadow lifts the top page, looks at the pages. Yeah, the top 3 pages are the actual presentation. The rest seems to be reference and background material. Mind if I read this now? That's why you're here. The waiter comes over. What will you two have today? Rice kofta, Shadow says. Rice sandwich, 2 actually. Shadow looks up. Rye? Yeah, I'm trying it out. Shadow starts reading. The topic of environmental warming is considered a hot topic. And that is the end of the last chapter. But it is considered a hot topic. Improving the grammar a little bit is probably a good idea. But I gotta say, keeping your grammar straight while you're writing high is pretty hard. You don't notice a lot of the weirdnesses and errors. And it wasn't as bad as I was expecting. It's it needs some work. Not as bad as I was remembering it, but it is campy and could use some work. So I'm thinking this thread is more than 1 year old. Your message may be considered against the rules for the following reasons. It is very likely that it does not need any further discussion and thus bumping it serves no purpose. I do not think that applies to the original author writing more for the story, just somebody else bumping it. So I'm gonna write Probably from the point of view of it being a year later, I think I'm gonna keep this as kind of like an autobiography, kinda. And I'm gonna write about it's gonna be Kaiden, I think, a shadow or Lamia. I can never recall which is which. It's gonna be Kaiden from Mass Effect as being Shadow, I think. The guy who writes most of the stuff, or was no, it's Lamia who's Kaiden, I think. And it's gonna be, if I don't get some kind of other impulse, I'm gonna write about the neurochips breaking down and they needing the machine species help. And it's gonna be a journey through the local space to their thing. Then maybe a few chapters, maybe two or three, maybe even five, but I don't think so. Perhaps four. It seems to be high, of them changing the implant and getting adjusted to it, and then perhaps 10 or so chapters walking back. And then that's going to be the end of it. It's mostly a presentation of what is going on in local space, what is life like after the Imperium, what is happening in the local region. There is some parts where they visit the Eye of Terra. They've been in Slanisha's palace, and there's a few bones on the ground where the palace used to be, and the howling of demons in the distance. But it is calm, and most of the demons just seem content to be. They are expecting to slowly build back up, but they are not in a rush. The demons of this storyline aren't really a danger to humanity. They are leftovers. And humanity had its numbers culled, but they've built up. They have returned roughly to the original numbers, and they are mostly interested in expanding further out from the galaxy, but there's very few worlds in the void. So there's not much benefit to it, but sometimes there are a few worlds that can be inhabited. And there's a few amazing sights. This might actually be worth of doing it so that these guys are in the void or going to the intergalactic space to find this particular empire, I think. Any comments thus far? What did you think? Keep in mind I have a reading impairment, so you can really tell some of the parts were impaired. I will be right back. Any comments? Jeewis, the other guy, I think, was something like Berkeley Weasley or something like that. So, any comments? Feedback? Opinions? What did you like? What did you dislike? I will listen to music for a while and then I will write. Jesus Christ. Sorry to blaspheme. I didn't write much, but I think I got the news of what's going on in the world out of the way. We'll see. It's been a year since the presentation. It was taken well, though even then there were some unredeemable faults in the characters and study patterns of the two. Lamia passed the finals, barely. Shadow did not. Finals were 3 months ago. The stress is starting to wear off, but while the flesh heals, the machinery might not. It started with headaches, then moved to migraines. Lamia is not doing well. Actually, this should be that should be Shadow. Yeah, it should be Shadow. Shadow is not good. They've been trying to manufacture a new implant to repair or replace the faulty one, the one causing all the problems. It's been hard work, but it seems no one in the space shared by humanity's shards has the needed know-how. What started as pains is now becoming a real nuisance, perhaps even a danger. Lamia and Shadow sit in the library, flicking through the pages of the books and stories there to find if there is anyone to find who would know how to fix this. Necrons are not the solution they were looking for. The Eldar would prefer options not usable by a human. The Tau would recommend meditation. None of the choices presented seem worth uh, worth of the time. Lamia picks up a old newspaper. He shrugs while reading and turns to Shadow. Hey, check this out. The Olamic Quietude has been sighted in the void. Shadow pauses from reading one of the books on Necron and turns to Lamia. Olamics? Really? I heard they were pretty good with machines. You'd have to be what with most of your body being a machine. And they were stylish too, not like the Mechanicum. Yeah, some typo. Some might consider them pretty, if a little nuts. You want to give it a shot? Shadow pauses for a while, looks up, and mutters a quiet prayer in response. Yeah, I might as well. How's it doing? If it were only seeing shadows and having headaches, he turns to look at Lamia, then quickly averts his eyes. Not even seeing doubles. Your face looks like a puddle of goo with two eyes looking back at me. Shit, even the eyes have wings, says Lamia, then continues. I'll try to set up the meeting. You okay with reading some more? Sure, a little mud face isn't gonna stop me, Shadow laughs. Lamia passes the newspaper to Shadow. Shadow sits in one of the awkwardly comfortable chairs and begins to read. That is a short chapter, but that is what I'm going with. Comments, feedback, instead of just ghosting. You did a bear. That's nice. Now asking for military's feedback. Now asking for the military's opinion on my story. What do they think of me eliminating 30% of humanity to get rid of evil? And we're done. So, thank you for enjoying this stream. We will hopefully be writing more, though I would appreciate some comments on the thread because it seems quiet. It was nice, though, hearing that you liked it. Now, dear subscribers, and I think I'm gonna go eat now, perhaps. Thank you for watching.